Lagos, traveling to a couple of cities here, filming for our docuseries as we work on this, and we hope you enjoy the programming slate.
Yes, and we have contributors from here in Nigeria and Lagos. We have folks from Addis Ababa and Ethiopia.
From the Bay Area.
Yeah, the Bay, from all over.
The United States, New York area.
Chicago. So it's a global event.
Yeah, it's a global event of sorts. Nigeria, the United States. Yeah.
Ethiopia.
Definitely continental and diasporic, which is the idea of the event. Anyway, it's 3 hours of programming. We hope you stay for everything, or at least drop in for some things. So Michael Elegbede is a chef. I think he's probably one of the most interesting, like, Nigerian, African, or just chefs, period, that I have met. Just really doing interesting things. I just have to be honest, like, initially, when I first learned about Michael, I wasn't sure what to think about him. And I think,
why is that?
Because I don't know. I was just like, I just saw his work on Instagram, and it just looked like he looked beautiful, and then he's also like a beautiful man in his face, and he often takes off his shirt. I'm like, who's this person that does this? you know. But then I came to know him personally. We've come to know him personally.
Right.
We were just at his place,
a couple days ago.
Yeah, for dinner, and he's just like really thoughtful about his food. That's the most striking thing about him. Like, he thinks about his food deeply, and when you ask him a question that you think is obvious, he gives you a really detailed answer that you hadn't considered, and he's mostly talking about food and Nigerian food and access. And so I love him, actually. And Mrs. Ukoh, I think we would describe her as like a traditionalist, but she's also adventurous with Nigerian food and what she does with it. So we had this idea to put them in conversation,
right,
because we thought that they came from different ends of the spectrum when it comes to Nigerian food.
Right. Mrs. Ukoh mostly cooks at home, and she has a very popular food blog amongst Nigerian diaspora and folks here. And she has, on her own, been a student of Nigerian food outside of the food she's familiar with.
Yeah.
Like her specific region of Nigeria, and has traveled and been just professionally curious.
And not only that, she's a nutritionist.
Yes.
And she also used to work as a marketer for a large multinational here, a food conglomerate. So she sort of like observed food from all these different from the corporate aspect to the sort of like digital, and then also as somebody who cooks at home. And yeah, we had them in conversation, and it was interesting. We were hoping for some fireworks, and maybe there were some, but both of them are lovely.
Yeah, and I think what unites both of them is they love Nigerian food, or are convinced by it.
Yeah.
You don't need to sell them on the history of this food, the sort of contemporary version of this food. They are fascinated and in love with it. So in that way, they had a ton to agree on, and then some different approaches towards how that love is articulated in each of their food practices.
Yeah.
So it's a great conversation.
Sometimes I ask myself, but must it be this tiny little piece of duck? because for me, I want the leg of the duck. I mean, so I'm tearing it, I'm pulling it. But yeah, okay, I mean, look, we have to get to the point where we can go somewhere and sit where there's no water to wash hands, and we can eat this duck, decently. So I think those are the kind of things you're doing. And also exposing, I believe, Nigerian food to a more global audience.
Coming to Nigeria, it was very difficult for me finding resources to what we do and culturally food, what we have.
Yes.
And you were one of the few people who had taken that challenge on, historically representing and archiving and telling stories of your journeys to the village, to the fish market, your garden, your farms, and you giving a deeper insight to what it meant to represent and understand Nigerian food and cuisine. And it was very important to me to tap into that immense knowledge pool that you have to help me understand, what I would be going into when I traveled.
Yeah. We talk about fusion, and I talk about fusion with my daughter at him. Okay, we have arguments about fusion, and I'm asking, are we there yet? Should we move that fast? And I remember when this guy, the later Anthony Boden, came to Nigeria, one thing he said, was that, look, if he comes in here, he wants to see authentic Nigerian dishes. And of course, the word authentic, a lot of debate about that. But I always tell people that, what is authentic? I say, if I put egusi soup in my mouth blind, I should be able to tell you it's egusi soup. It doesn't matter how it was cooked, okay? So for me, I'm looking at us blending Nigeria, within Nigeria. If you take miyan taushe, for instance, and I start to eat miyan taushe with amala. I mean, you make miyan taushe and you get me to eat it with, then we're talking. I mean, that's where I am. I know you've moved on to fusion, but for me, I'm saying, can we just fuse within Nigeria first?
On the contrary, I don't believe what I do is fusion.
Oh, okay. Tell me.
I believe what I do is a different representation of how to experience what we already have.
Sure.
I do want people to have that experience. Not necessarily you put egusi in your mouth and you're like, this is grandma's egusi. But you put egusi in your mouth and you're like, wow, what I saw is not what I thought I would taste. You have the iru, you have the dried fish flavor, all of the flavors that are represented in the traditional way of making egusi. Once it hits your palate, you're like, wow, I didn't realize this same flavor profiles can be represented in this form. And people are like, this is fusion. And I'm like, it's not fusion. We think that representation is trying to make it nice. I don't think of it as me trying to make it nice. I think of it as a spectrum of representation. The more you create diverse ways of representing things, the more value inherently there are.
Fine dining.
Yes.
For who? For the average Nigerian? Or for who? I mean, is it for the average American? Because even in America, the American will not go to, that average person might not go to fine dining. So when you say fine dining, who are we selling?
If I wanted to do fine dining for the European market or the American market, I will be in America or Europe.
Okay.
Being in Nigeria, I think it's very important. What happens in third world countries, which inherently what we are, is we undervalue our food and our cuisine and our ingredients. And it takes a different perspective to say that whatever it is that the French are doing with their food, whatever it is that the Japanese and the Europeans are doing with their food and the Americans, our food are worthy of being on the same platforms. Our food are worthy of taking an insightful, a more sometimes even scientific approach towards understanding those ingredients. And in many ways, you're doing the same thing, but because you experiment with food all the time.
I know. I was just putting you on this spot.
No.
I know.
But I love the question because I think it's something that is often misunderstood.
Yeah, I know.
In our cuisine, in our representation, most of my clients are Nigerians.
Yeah.
And they're Nigerians who have traveled for food, to experience food in this art form. Because at the end of the day, culinary art is an art form. And if, I want to eat amala and abula, I've traveled to Ibadan to eat abula.
I know that when I was, getting married, part of the things my mom gave me was a mortar and pestle and, those kind of things.
You mean she didn't give you a Vitamix?
So, I mean, I guess, she would have given me a packet of poundo yam if I was going, getting married today. So as things evolve and as lifestyle change and as we live differently, we also have to adapt quickly, because or else we then lose the food itself, because we can't do it in the way our current reality would allow us to do.
The ironic thing is when, a cuisine goes through this process of relative, I don't like calling it evolution, because it gives a connotation that it's creating a progression.
Or you've abandoned the past and you want to. Yeah.
No, I like to think when you create different spectrums to see a culture through, then more than often people begin to even gravitate more towards like the traditional way. Like how it's been made, because there's now a value attached to the core essence of how it's being produced. And people are like, now that we know that there's, people like, I don't eat poundo yam because I'm like, why, like I would rather use my KitchenAid to make pounded yam, or like, go somewhere where they use a month, because when I want to eat pounded yam,
I want the real thing.
I want the yam. Because the texture is different.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And that's the beautiful thing about creating spectrums. Then you have different ways in which you can experience that. And also, like, we're agriculturally and our economy and value chain and our food system, the more you're creating different ways to use an ingredient. Like, we look at Gary. If all we are doing with Gary is making a bar and drinking it, there's no value to it.
A lot of things we can create from our foods. And we are the ones that would create that demand for the farmer. I give you an example. Parsley. Before the advent of food blogging and foodies and what have you. Oh no, you had to go to special supermarkets to get parsley.
3-4 years ago.
Yeah. Now, if I get into a market in Agboju, the malam there is selling parsley and much cheaper. I'm getting a whole bag for 200 naira. As opposed to these few sticks.
4 years ago, like finding thyme and parsley and oregano, was almost, they had to bring it in from Lebanon.
Exactly.
And I was mind blown. I was like, I don't understand. And it's through the work you do, the demand of, people realizing, and also knowledge, because that's very important.
I know.
Because it takes a different understanding of how to grow these herbs within our climate to really be able to grow them for the masses. And people now have that. And that
I mean, did we think that strawberry was grown in Nigeria?
That is
Did
the
we
biggest...
think that pears and I see farmers attempting to grow apples and pears and what have you. Before we know it, Nigeria will be the destination.
Absolutely.
Food destination. Gosh, that would be so exciting.
Those strawberries are still blowing my mind. They remind me, the last time I had strawberries that good, I was in Napa Valley.
No, like, I went to, this was 7 years ago, I was in Jos, and in this farm, not a heartwarming story, because I saw so much waste. The lady had grown. We sat there. We ate strawberry until, oh gosh, we said, we're full. And so I did the little bit I could, which was get somebody in Lagos, introduce her, link her up so that she can transport her, strawberry to Lagos. But is it sustainable? Maybe not, because the cold chain required for something like strawberry is still something that needs to be put in place, just so that farmers in this axis can have this strawberry without us having to import any strawberry into Nigeria.
See, this is where people like me come in. This is where the idea of discovering the multiple ways of using strawberries within our space, in the time that we got our strawberries, we've made strawberry leather, we've made strawberry vinegar, we've dehydrated strawberries for chips, we've made strawberry marmalades, strawberry compote. These are all preserved methods that anyone would want to buy.
I know.
But we this is how it evolves, you know,
Yeah.
within this small crevice of Eton, we create ideologies that helps the market in sustainability. Like if we were making eba chips,
Yeah.
if eba chips becomes a thing, eba, the value of eba has gone skyrocketed.
Oh yes. I'm going to be talking now. I'm taking off my food cap and putting on my marketing cap.
Yes.
You know? I think there's a gap in marketing in a lot of these things. Brilliant ideas I see, but what I seem to find missing is the marketing of it. Anything at all has to be marketed. You know, if I'm a farmer in Jos and I don't know that Arbori exists, there's a problem. I can't go on that platform. So I think it's this thing about and aggressive marketing. You know, we're in the digital age.
Absolutely.
The noise on digital is heavy, and unless you can successfully disrupt on that platform, nice idea would just be a nice idea. So it's about, you know, real creative marketing around some of these ideas that would help. You know, trust me, when I started buying parsley from Agboju Market, it was because a food blogger talked about it.
This system, it's multifaceted.
Yes.
You know, for instance, in our kitchen, the plates we use is made by a local artisan woman in Ogun State that just makes plates for local people.
Wow.
And that is something that I believe creates an awareness and a mentality that is beyond just like, oh, what is this is about going to go in here? Is this for Eba? Is this for Egusi?
Yeah.
No, it's creating an availability and a diversity in expression of things that we already use. They're clay plates, you know. So you have clay plates that are being used for things that are, you know, supposedly fine dining.
I know.
And which is not a norm.
Yeah.
So we're and I many times question, you know, my expression, and I would like to think I've evolved over the time that I've been here, because I would think the way I started, I had, you know, background in Western culinary education, so my initial expression of Nigerian food was very Western.
Okay.
You know, the white porcelain plates.
Yes.
You know, everything with sauces and you know, and over time, the more I understood what it meant to be Nigerian, and what it meant to represent our food, the more I needed to represent that in my expression of it.
Yeah.
So from the plateware that we use, like when I see porcelain plates, I don't think of it as us.
Yeah.
I go to the market and the people who are selling plates they're clay plates, you know, traditionally.
Yeah.
But the problem now comes where, you know, I'm serving someone with a clay plate and they're like, which one is this Ebo ritual thing that you are?
No, I know so many of my followers who have come to say, I've started a restaurant just by following you. I've learned this, I've learned that, you know, just by, you know, watching what you do. Some you're giving free advice, you know. I mean, I said I've never done a restaurant in my life, but they want this recipe, they want this special recipe. And you feel good, you know, that yes, I've helped this entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
She's going on, she's succeeding, and if she does, food on the table for her family or food on the table for his family. So there is a ripple effect.
Absolutely. The reason why, you know, there's parsley in the
Agboju
local market, in Agboju market, is because of the work you're doing.
Yeah.
And that is necessary. And it's not because of the demand of the minority, of the 1%. That's not why there's parsley in Agboju market. Because the people that go to Agboju market are not the minority.
No, they're not.
1%.
Yes.
They're everyone else.
Yes.
And That's very important. I didn't even know that, but it's a very important and significant change in the food space.
Actually, parsley is used in a lot of northern dishes. There's this dambu shinkafa. It's steamed rice, and it's a dish that a lot of parsley is used. If you also understand that the northern cuisine has some semblance with Arabian, Mediterranean, they have a mix going on there. They use a lot of parsley there. So, yes, parsley might just have been there in the north. But because the southern foodie, like you and me, are talking more about it, I'm then ready to adopt the northern dish. Or I now see that, by the way, I can add parsley to my Nigerian salad, not salad.
Salad.
Nigerian salad. That's, parsley can make such a nice difference in taste to my Nigerian salad.
People are beginning to understand the reason why parsley is added to a dish.
A dish,
You finish with something.
Looks nice to the eye.
It's
nice
aesthetic.
to
Flavor-wise,
yes.
It's good. Everything about it, and beyond even parsley, thyme and oregano.
Exactly, we're getting them fresh now.
Exactly.
I mean, growing up, my mom always had that container of thyme.
But we always use dry thyme.
And I thought, for most of my life, I thought thyme had to be dry.
Yeah, absolutely true.
It's more recently that we've seen fresh thyme, fresh rosemary, fresh oregano. Most of these things were dry imported.
Yes.
Now we can use the fresh ones in our cooking.
What you just said is literally an anthropological perspective on our food.
Yeah.
Why did we use dried ingredients? Because
they were imported. Nobody was growing it locally.
And if we were, we didn't have ways to preserve them but dry them. So it's beautiful. And you spoke about evolution, and Massimo also said any culture that doesn't evolve should go to a museum. And now we realize that we're in a society that we can now use more than dried parsley. Now we can use fresh parsley, we can use fresh thyme, things that are often not a reality of our cooking process. Fresh thyme in jollof rice takes a very, very different flavor
dimension. Yes, from
the dry thyme that are commonly used, and it's great because then we're able to experience things that are traditional in a very different perspective. We're in a revolution of food right now. The louder we are in that revolution, the more the realities of our food system, the more people speak about it, the more access that the rest of the majority have to the realities of our food.
Because we have to be our voice.
Absolutely.
We have to.
Absolutely.
Like they say in Nigeria, loud it.
Yeah, allowed it.
Loud it.
Mommy, you're more hip than me.
Or they say, Sorosoke, which is loud it. So we have to be the voice.
Loud it.
Loud it.
Mommy, you're more hip than me.
Or they say, Sorosoke, which is loud it. So we have to be the voice. And thanks to social media, we have the opportunity to loud it.
Yes.
If we don't loud it, nobody's going to loud it for us.
True.
That's it.
We have to be the ones that tell our story.
Yes,
and that's why I'm in Nigeria, not anywhere else.
Yeah.
You know what is beautiful about our reality now in Nigeria is the ability for us to have the impact that we're having in it.
Yeah.
I mean, the work that you do, and you're such a creative. I'm not trying to kiss your ass. I'm sorry. I can't. I'm not. But the images you take, the way you express, you know,
I just
it's remarkable. ginger.
Okay.
So
Okay.
this is the pineapple ginger. We're going to harvest this tomorrow.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I
They're
can see.
ready. Look at that. Like they're budding out. And it smells so good right out the soil. And the leaves.
Yeah, the leaves.
Like
Yes.
tea.
Yeah.
I use it for tea all the
Oh,
time.
that's good. It's
Look
it's
at
like a
that.
cross between lemongrass and ginger.
Exactly.
It's lovely.
Like. Oh, you have to take off your mask for this,
That's lovely.
right?
Very earthy.
Very earthy. I think the reality of any society, the people who kind of hold on to the cultural and nostalgic and most reverent like perspective and expression of like the cuisine will be the people who are the least privileged, the people who are in the most rural areas,
Yeah.
the people who that's all they've ever known, and because of that, they keep it, they hold it, you know, very reverent, and it also shows itself, you know, in you know we're the largest black country in population in the world, and you see Nigerians that were taken to, like, you take Bahia in Brazil, for instance. Nigerians that were taken to Bahia because that's what they've known, that's what they keep, you know, reverent. They held on to the culture of Nigerian religious practices, Nigerian culinary practices. So they, like, you hear akaraje, that's akara, you know. And so coming back to Nigeria, when I did, I didn't stay in Lagos to learn about Nigerian food. I went to the most rural regions around the country to experience what it meant to really express Nigerian food. The fermentation processes, the drying processes, the cooking processes, all of those
Smoking.
things, the smoking, all of those things are they're most vivid in the rural areas amongst the people of the lower threshold of the society, and that's unfortunately the reality. Like, you know, when I was traveling through the south and the southeast, you know, I got to understand how the Civil War
Yeah.
changed the way people
Oh
ate.
yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, because people were migrating through forests, and people didn't, you know, because you couldn't always have fire. There were dishes that were made with raw ingredients. So
Yeah.
now we have like
Sauces.
sauces
You
that
know,
are
palm
raw.
oil and pepper
Yes.
and things. Yeah, just because you didn't have fire to do it.
Yes, because you will expose your location if you had fire.
Yeah.
And that became a delicacy. But it's also, you know, a reality of the time that they were in, because it you know, the origination of those dishes were from traditional dishes that they had in the cultures that they were coming from. So going back to the reality that we are first of all, we're in a global society. I don't think any culture is exclusive of the influences of the people and the cultures that they're surrounded by, especially being a country that had been colonized. Yes, we know so much about the British colonization, but before then, we had a lot of influences, that cultural colonizations. And I don't think necessary, like, learning new things and incorporating it into your reality is terrible. But obviously, the British didn't have good food, so we didn't need to. All my British friends, sorry. But the reality is, when did we start using curry? The curry powder.
I think 60s or something.
Yes, and
60s.
the same reason why the Indians use curry is the same reason why we use it, because it was an amalgamation of spices that the British
Yeah.
had collected through their journeys and colonizing the world. And it's important to know that,
Yeah.
but it's also very important to know what we have and what we had, and that goes with the documentation.
Yeah.
Who's telling the story,
Sorry. Yeah.
and what knowledge and perspective are they coming from?
You know, as you were talking, I said culture. Over time, would we still be able to hang on to it?
But what are we hanging on to? That's the question.
Well, okay.
Because
I don't know. No, but you know, we talked about the Nigerian food, the Nigerian culture.
like, depends on how far back you go.
Yeah, but you know, I mean,
Is it ever static? Is it ever
Yes,
it's not. I know it's not
Yeah.
static, but would there still be a culture? That's what I'm.
We like our food too much.
I
There will still
know,
be.
I know, but you know, over time, you know, I look when I do roast yam on my page, and I look at the engagement on that post, I look at the likes, I look at the comment. It tells me that people are roasting yam was in the farm. I like the flavor of roasted yam. I'm a foodie, but really, if I was not a foodie, maybe I wouldn't even be talking of roasted yam. And I saw that something like that is already far-fetched. So over time, I'm asking, would there still be a culture?
Yes.
I worry.
I see your concern,
I worry.
and I think I try to look at other cultures a lot to, in some ways, understand the realities of mine. Representation is key, and coming back home, I realized the amount of shame that the generation after me, the 18-year-olds, and how much shame they have to the culture in general.
Yeah.
Like, you know, not even to the core of not even wanting to speak the language because they want to be so
Tell me that
affluent
no,
in
until
speaking English.
it was until the musicians started speaking it. Started infusing the local language into
Representation.
music, and then
Representation.
Yeah.
That's it, right? Representation. So now you have representation in language. People,
Yeah.
you know, rapping in Igbo.
Yes,
You know,
rapping
Davido
in Hausa,
using Yoruba. In
Yoruba,
Hausa.
yeah.
Now the language is more relevant, and there's no because now they're getting Billboard awards, and there's no shame in understanding what it is that they're saying, and I think it's also the same for
With
the food.
yeah.
The more we have representation in spaces beyond Buka,
Yeah.
the more the generations after us will begin to realize that you can be cool and still eat eba and understand eba and understand amala and gbegiri.
Yeah.
The more it's in spaces that are more esteemed, not because the food has never been esteemed, but the story of it had never been told enough to be understood. The more the story is being told and understood, the more relevant it becomes. What is happening now? We have so much more biodiversity, and we would be doing a disservice to both ourselves and the next generations if we don't use the ingredients that we have now to create
yeah.
more.
Yeah. I mean, because you know, sometimes I ask myself, how did my great grandparents come up with the fact that you can go to the forest, pluck agbalumo, African star apple? Who told them it was edible? And I ask myself, what am I going to leave behind? They've left agbalumo for me. They've left amala for me. They've left edikanko. They've left ekpankoko for me. What am I leaving behind? And it's something that bothers me a bit, because I mean, I'm creating based on what they found out. But can I create something and leave behind for the next generation? Look at the food and say, okay, yes, we do this. Because if you look at akara, who thought of it? Who thought of moi moi? Because it was created from beans. Whose idea was it? What can I then leave behind?
So complex.
Yes, I mean, but
so complex.
I should try and leave something behind.
Yeah, absolutely.
I should try and leave moi moi
Yes.
and sasso behind.
Yes, yes. I'll leave Eba Crisp behind.